So it's that time of week again, let's talk about the Amazing Spider-Man comics. And yes, I know that I said I'd do one video rounding up the whole series essentially when it's finished, and I still will do that, but with every issue that comes out, I find myself having to talk about something with you guys, and I also want to get your guys' thoughts on this as well. But anyway, the new issue came out a few days ago, and I really want to talk about it. And essentially, the reason why I want to talk about it is because, well, first of all, it isn't as bad as the other issues, but I think its main issue here is mischaracterizing a bunch of the Marvel characters. And this isn't anything against Zeb Wells, because clearly Zeb Wells has writing experience, because some of the dialogue isn't inherently bad in this issue, and I know Zeb Wells has a lot of other writing credit before. However, I just don't think he understands these characters as much as he thinks he does, because some of these characters are heavily mischaracterized, and I felt like Peter Parker wasn't Peter Parker at all. I felt like he was a completely different person. Normally, when I read Spider-Man comics, I can hear Peter Parker's voice in either one of the following: Josh Keaton, Christopher Daniel Barnes, or even in some cases, Tom Holland. But I didn't feel like I heard any of those voices when I was reading this comic. I heard someone completely different. Like, the words being spoken by Peter Parker could not come out of any of those voice actors' mouths when playing Spider-Man. And it wasn't just Peter Parker too. This issue carried over for the rest of the Marvel characters that showed up in this comic book as well, including the Fantastic Four and most prominently Johnny Storm. So if you guys haven't read the comic book but are just curious as to what happened, essentially Peter is looking for Mary Jane. And after the last issue, when Peter was transported back to the main universe, Peter is now trying to find a way to transfer universes and find Mary Jane again, who is now trapped with Paul. Peter in this issue finds out that essentially time runs at different speeds in both universes, which we will later find out is how Mary Jane has 2 kids with Paul later on in the series chronologically. So Peter is obviously really frantically trying to find a way back. So the first thing that Peter does is he goes to the Baxter building, which is the first place anyone in the Marvel universe would go if they need help traveling universes. Obviously he is looking for Reed Richards, and we have to remember that the set of superheroes that Peter Parker is closest to is the Fantastic Four. Johnny Storm is a really good friend of Peter Parker, and it has always been that way. One of the relationships outside of the supporting cast in the Spider-Man comics that Peter has with the main Marvel universe is Johnny Storm. Johnny Storm and Peter Parker have been good friends for a very long time. And essentially, when Peter shows up at the Baxter building, they tie him up and essentially say, you know what, no, you can't use Reed's lab to try and hop universes, because essentially we don't trust you. And their reasoning is that they need to see if Peter is actually who he says he is because of the destruction caused by his re-entry into the main universe. Now, I know that obviously Spider-Man has a track record of swapping bodies like Superior Spider-Man, but apart from that one explosion that happened in Pennsylvania in this comic, Peter has been himself the entire time. There has been nothing else that suggests that Spider-Man is being controlled by someone else. There is nothing else that suggests Spider-Man is at all turned evil. And now the Fantastic Four, specifically Johnny Storm and Ben Grimm, want to essentially say that Peter's lying? Peter is clearly desperate for help because Mary Jane is missing, and they just won't help him. Johnny Storm and Peter Parker, like I said, have been great friends for the majority of the Marvel Universe and its time in existence. And the fact that they won't help Peter is a little bit ludicrous. And I know that for the purpose of the story, they have to reject him because, you know, that's the way the story is going to go. That's the way that Zeb Wells wants the story to go. But it just doesn't make any sense that Johnny Storm won't help Peter. I think that's a bit ridiculous, and the reason is that they don't know who he says he is. We also get told that Captain America wants to check in on Peter as well to make sure he is who he says he is, just like Johnny Storm says. And then this is where a lot of the mischaracterization for Peter comes as well, because when Cap confronts him very conveniently in this comic, Peter kind of just pushes him aside and escapes. He doesn't take a moment to just kind of explain, you know, hey, yeah, I'm Peter Parker, I'm Spider-Man, everything's cool, I kind of need a lot of help right now. Instead, he just attacks Cap and punches him, and there's just no reason for Peter to do this. It would only take him a few seconds to basically just explain the whole situation. Peter is in a rush, I know, but this is Captain America. If the man wants to talk to you, just talk to him. Eventually, Peter ends up going to Norman Osborn for help, and obviously this is at the beginning of this story where Norman is now good. So now building up in this new storyline, we are going to get shown how Peter and Norman developed their relationship and why they were basically fine with each other at the start of the Zeb Wells run. And I'm glad they're giving some attention to this because I felt like Peter trusting Norman was always a massive issue I had with these comics, and in my earlier videos I expressed my distaste for this story as well, so hopefully they can give this story a little bit more backstory and give it a little bit more of an oomph in terms of explaining why they are actually trusting of each other now, especially from Peter's end, because obviously we know what Norman did with Gwen and all the pain and suffering that Norman has caused to Peter over the years. But yeah, I hope that this comic does end well. It hasn't been good so far. This issue just mischaracterized a bunch of our favorite characters, and I felt like it hasn't been doing them justice. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and I'll catch you guys on Wednesday for a brand new video. Take care, and peace.